Police K-9 freezes a WWII memorial. Agent Collins weeps at secret below. Max's ears perked up before the radio call came in. Sarah Collins had learned to trust her K-9 partner's instincts over their 6 years together, and something in his sudden alertness made her pulse quicken. When dispatch finally crackled to life, the Belgian Malinois was already positioned by the patrol car's door, his muscular frame tense with anticipation. Unit K-97, suspicious activity reported at World War II Memorial. Security guard noted unusual movements near the East Wing. No signs of break-in. Sarah adjusted her tactical belt, the familiar weight of her service weapon providing little comfort against the unease growing in her stomach. The autumn morning had dawned crisp and clear over Atlanta, painting the memorial grounds in shades of gold and amber. As she guided their vehicle through the nearly empty streets, Max's usual professional calm gave way to an anxious whine, a sound she'd heard only twice before, both times preceding their most dangerous cases. The memorial stood silent against the pale morning sky, its granite walls still holding the chill of dawn. Sarah unclipped Max's lead, watching as he immediately took point, his black and tan coat gleaming in the early light. Standard procedure dictated a preliminary perimeter sweep, but Max had other ideas. He moved with deliberate purpose toward the East Wing, ignoring their usual search pattern. "Max, circle," Sarah commanded, her voice low and firm. For the first time in their partnership, Max hesitated. His muscles trembled, eyes fixed on a specific section of ground near the memorial's foundation. The behavior was so unusual that Sarah felt her training kick in, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. "What is it, partner?" she whispered, scanning the area for immediate threats. The memorial grounds remained still, save for leaves skittering across the maintained lawn. Max's posture grew more rigid, a low whine building in his throat. Then, without warning, he dropped to his haunches and began to howl, a sound so mournful it sent chills down Sarah's spine. Years of training kicked in as Sarah radioed for backup, her eyes never leaving Max. The K-9 unit had the highest success rate in the department, and Max's behavior indicated something far beyond a routine call. She approached carefully, her boots silent on the dew-dampened grass. "Easy, Max," she soothed, but her partner remained fixated. After 15 tense minutes of resistance to all standard commands, Max finally began to dig, his powerful paws moving with desperate urgency. Sarah's flashlight beam caught something metallic beneath the disturbed soil, an old ammunition box, its surface corroded but intact. With gloved hands, Sarah carefully extracted the box, its weight suggesting contents beyond mere ammunition. The lid creaked open to reveal a stack of yellowed documents and a small golden key, its surface untarnished by time. As she began to examine the papers, her trained eye caught dates, official seals, and names. Important names. The sound of footsteps behind her triggered an immediate response. Sarah pivoted, one hand moving to her weapon while Max shifted seamlessly into a defensive position. Theodore Hammond, the memorial's director, emerged from the shadows of the building. His tailored suit seemed out of place at this early hour, and his forced smile didn't reach his eyes. "Agent Collins," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I wasn't aware K-9 units responded to simple security checks." His gaze flickered to the box in Sarah's hands, and something dark passed across his features. Max's growl was barely audible, but Sarah felt the vibration through the ground. She'd learned to read her partner's signals like a second language, and right now, every hair on his body was telling her that Hammond represented a threat. "Standard procedure, Mr. Hammond," she replied evenly, subtly shifting the box behind her leg. "We take all calls seriously, especially around historical sites." The morning sun had risen enough to cast long shadows across the grounds, and Sarah noticed movement at the memorial's entrance. 2 security guards, moving with too much purpose for routine patrol. Time seemed to slow as Sarah processed the scene. Hammond's too casual stance, The guard's deliberate positioning, Max's continued tension, the documents in the box suddenly felt heavy with significance. This wasn't a routine call. It was the beginning of something much darker. "You know," Hammond said, taking a measured step forward, "some histories are better left buried, Agent Collins." His hand moved slowly toward his jacket pocket, especially those that have stayed hidden for so long. Sarah's next actions would set an irreversible chain of events in motion, but with Max steady at her side and years of experience guiding her instincts, she knew there was only one choice. Some truths demanded to be uncovered, no matter the cost. As Hammond reached into his jacket, Max's muscles coiled, ready to spring. Sarah's hand tightened on her weapon, and the morning air crackled with tension. The next few seconds would change everything, for her, for Max, and for the long-buried secrets of Atlanta's past that were about to come to light. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first drops of rain began to fall on the memorial grounds, as if nature itself was preparing to bear witness to what would unfold. Sarah met Hammond's gaze steadily, knowing that whatever came next would test everything she and Max had trained for, and perhaps, even more importantly, the unshakable bond between a handler and her K-9 partner. The fluorescent lights of the precinct's evidence room buzzed overhead as Sarah spread the documents across the metal table. 3 hours had passed since the confrontation at the memorial, where Hammond's reach for his jacket had revealed nothing more threatening than a handkerchief, a calculated move that left Sarah questioning her instincts. But Max's reaction told a different story. Even now, the Belgian Malinois sat alert by the door, his behavior markedly different from their usual evidence reviews. "What do you make of this, Captain?" Sarah pushed a particularly weathered document toward Rodriguez, her finger tapping a list of numbers that didn't add up. The captain's face darkened as he scanned the page, his coffee forgotten. "These are compensation records," Rodriguez muttered, pulling out his reading glasses. "But these amounts, they're only a fraction of what should have been paid to the families." His voice carried the weight of personal connection. His own grandfather had served in World War II. Sarah's phone buzzed, displaying a text from an unknown number. "The memorial holds more secrets than just paper. Back off while you can." She deleted the message, but photographed it first, her training kicking in. Max's head snapped up, sensing the shift in her energy. "Keep this quiet," Rodriguez ordered, gathering the documents. "I'll have digital forensics analyze the phone threat. Meanwhile, you and Max do what you do best. Dig deeper but carefully." He paused at the door. "And Collins, watch your back. Cases like this have a way of growing roots." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the memorial's windows as Sarah and Max conducted their second sweep. She'd waited until Hammond's sleek Mercedes left the parking lot before moving in, using her newly acquired access codes to enter through a side door. The building felt different now, its marble halls holding secrets that seemed to whisper from every corner. Max moved with practiced efficiency, but his pattern was deliberate, leading them consistently back to the East Wing. Sarah followed, trusting her partner's instincts. They'd solved enough cases together for her to know that Max's behavior was more than simple animal intuition. It was years of training, combined with an almost supernatural ability to sense wrongdoing. In the memorial's archive room, Sarah discovered the first real lead. Buried in a file labeled Building Maintenance 1947-1950 was a blueprint that didn't match the current layout. Max's ears perked up as she unfolded the yellowed paper, revealing dotted lines that suggested a basement level, one that didn't appear on any modern plans. A noise in the hallway sent them both into alert mode. Max moved silently to Sarah's side, his body tense but controlled. Footsteps approached, then stopped. Sarah held her breath, one hand on her weapon, the other ready to signal Max. The door handle turned slowly. James Porter, the night security guard, stepped into view. His face showed surprise, then relief at seeing Sarah. "Agent Collins, I didn't expect anyone else here this late." His hands shook slightly as he reached into his pocket, producing a folded piece of paper. "I've been wanting to talk to you, but not here. They've got cameras everywhere, and not all of them feed to official security." Sarah studied him carefully, while Max performed a subtle scent check, a technique they'd developed for reading potential informants. The dog's relaxed posture told her Porter wasn't an immediate threat. "There's more going on here than missing money," Porter whispered, glancing nervously at the shadows. "Hammond, he's got people watching us, watching you." Tonight, he had a meeting in his office with men I've never seen before. They were talking about something called Operation Legacy. His voice cracked. "My daughter." They mentioned knowing which school she attends. Before Sarah could respond, Max's head snapped toward the hallway. Footsteps again, multiple sets this time, moving with purpose. Porter's face went white. "The night patrol. They're early. You can't be seen here with me." He pressed the paper into her hand. "Tomorrow noon at the place I wrote down. Please, my family." Sarah and Max slipped out through the service entrance just as voices echoed through the archive room. In her car, under the dim parking lot lights, she unfolded Porter's note, an address in Old Fourth Ward, and beneath it words that made her blood run cold. "Hammond has the Keys twin. Whatever was in that box you found, it's only half the story. They're moving something tomorrow night. If they succeed, all evidence will disappear." Max whined softly from the back seat, his eyes fixed on the memorial's dark silhouette. Sarah checked her watch, 10:47 p.m. Less than 24 hours to uncover whatever Operation Legacy was, and somehow keep Porter's family safe in the process. She started the engine, her mind already mapping out their next moves. As they pulled away, Sarah caught movement in her rearview mirror, a black SUV with tinted windows, pulling out two cars behind them. Max's low growl confirmed what she already knew. Their investigation had just become a dangerous game of cat and mouse, and they weren't necessarily the cat. The streets of Atlanta stretched before them, a maze of possibilities and threats. Sarah took a series of random turns, testing their tail's persistence. In her mind, the pieces began to shift. The ammunition box, Hammond's reaction, Porter's warning, and somewhere in the city, a second key that might unlock it all. Tomorrow would bring answers, but first they had to survive the night. Sarah's hands trembled as she unlocked her grandmother's attic door. After shaking their tail with a series of tactical driving maneuvers, she'd made an impulsive decision to visit the old Victorian house in Inman Park. Max padded silently behind her, his nails clicking softly on the hardwood floors. It was 2 a.m., but Eleanor Collins was already awake, as if she'd been expecting them. "You found something at the memorial, didn't you?" Eleanor's voice carried none of its usual warmth. She stood at the top of the attic stairs, her silver hair catching the dim light, holding a weathered metal box, identical to the one Sarah had discovered hours earlier. Max's reaction was immediate, not aggressive, but alert. The same tension he'd displayed at the memorial rippled through his muscular frame. Sarah felt her professional detachment crumbling as decades of questions suddenly crystallized into sharp focus. "Grandma, how did you—" "Your grandfather didn't die in a training accident in 46. Eleanor's words cut through the musty attic air. That was the official story, the convenient story. She descended the stairs with surprising agility for her 92 years. The box clutched to her chest. Thomas was murdered because he discovered something he wasn't supposed to know. The attic held the accumulated weight of 3 generations. Sarah followed her grandmother to a trunk beneath the window, where moonlight filtered through aged glass. Eleanor's fingers, twisted with arthritis but still strong, worked the trunk's latches. "Your father never knew the truth. I kept it from him to keep him safe." She pulled out a manila envelope, its edges frayed. "But you, Sarah, you have Thomas's eyes, his sense of justice. And now that you've found the first box, you need to know everything." Max settled beside Sarah as she opened the envelope. Photos spilled out, her grandfather in uniform, standing proudly beside other officers. One image made her pause. Thomas Collins, with a much younger Theodore Hammond Sr., the current Hammond's father. They were shaking hands in front of the memorial's construction site. "Thomas was assigned to oversee compensation distributions," Eleanor explained, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "He noticed discrepancies. Money vanishing, records altered. When he started asking questions, they tried to buy his silence. She pulled out a letter, the paper thin with age. This arrived the day before he died. Sarah read the typed words, her police training noting details automatically. The letter was a thinly veiled threat, mentioning Thomas's misguided concerns and suggesting he consider his family's future. It was signed simply, "The Committee." The next morning, his car's brakes failed on Moores Mill Road. Eleanor's hands clenched around the metal box. The police investigation lasted less than a week. Case closed. Training accident. She met Sarah's eyes. But Thomas had prepared for this. He split the evidence between two boxes, hid them separately. "I've protected this one for decades, waiting for the right moment, the right person." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Porter. "They're moving tonight, not tomorrow. Storage facility on Peachtree Industrial. Please hurry." Her heart raced as the pieces started connecting. "Grandma, what exactly did Grandpa find?" Eleanor opened the box, revealing stacks of documents, photographs, and a golden key that matched the one from the memorial. Evidence of a conspiracy that went beyond stolen money. The memorial was built with a hidden purpose, a secure storage facility for items seized during the war. Art, gold, documents that could destroy powerful families. The committee, they didn't just steal from soldiers' families. They built an empire on the bones of our dead. Max's sudden growl cut through the tension. His eyes fixed on the window, ears forward. Sarah moved quickly, killing the attic light. A car engine purred outside, the same black SUV from earlier. They'd been followed after all. "The basement blueprints," Sarah whispered, remembering the plans she'd found. "They're not just storage. They're still using them, aren't they? Operation Legacy." Eleanor nodded grimly. "The original operation never ended. They've been using the memorial's foundation to hide their dealings for generations. Money laundering, stolen art, blackmail materials, all protected by the sanctity of a war memorial." She pressed the box into Sarah's hands. "Thomas died trying to expose this. Now you have both keys, all the evidence." A car door slammed outside. Max moved to the attic door, his training taking over, ready to protect. Sarah checked her weapon, mind racing through options. They were trapped in the attic, but she knew the house's layout. There was a chance. "The back stairs," Eleanor said, reading her granddaughter's thoughts. "Through my room. Max knows the way." The dog's ears perked at his name. They'd spent enough time here for him to know every escape route. "Go. I'll stall them." "Grandma, I can't leave you." "Sarah Catherine Collins." Eleanor's voice carried the steel that had sustained her through decades of silence. "Your grandfather gave his life for the truth. I've spent 50 years waiting for this moment. Go. Finish what he started." Footsteps creaked on the front porch. Max was already moving, leading Sarah to the back stairs. She hesitated at the attic door, watching her grandmother straighten her spine, years dropping away as she prepared to face the intruders. "I love you," Sarah whispered. Eleanor smiled, fierce and proud. "Give them hell, baby. Make your grandfather proud." As Sarah and Max slipped into the darkness of the back stairwell, she heard the front door splinter open. Her grandmother's voice rang out, clear and fearless. "Well, it certainly took you boys long enough to find me." The night air hit Sarah's face as she and Max emerged from the back door. The evidence from both boxes was now combined in her backpack, the twin keys heavy in her pocket. Porter's text about the storage facility beckoned, but her heart pulled her back toward the house. Max nudged her hand, his mission focus unwavering. He was right. The only way to protect Eleanor now was to finish this. As they melted into the shadows of Inman Park, Sarah silently vowed that before this night was over, her grandfather's killers would finally face justice. The game had changed. This wasn't just about solving a case anymore. This was about family, legacy, and a 50-year-old debt of blood that was finally coming due. The storage facility on Peachtree Industrial loomed against the pre-dawn sky, its security lights casting harsh shadows across empty parking lots. Sarah killed the engine 2 blocks away, her grandmother's revelation still burning in her mind. Max's breathing was steady in the back seat, his focus absolute, a counterpoint to her racing thoughts. "Ready, partner," she whispered. Max's ears twitched in response, his training overriding any fatigue from their long night. Sarah checked her watch. 4:17 a.m. The city slept, but her phone showed 4 missed calls from Captain Rodriguez. She'd have to explain her radio silence later. Movement caught her eye. A white van entering the storage facility's gate, followed by the now familiar black SUV. Sarah's pulse quickened as she recognized Hammond at the wheel of the SUV. Through her binoculars, she spotted James Porter opening the security gate, his movements stiff with tension. "Let's go, Max." They moved silently through the shadows, Sarah's tactical training merging with Max's natural stealth. The facility's chain-link fence posed no challenge. The gate guard was clearly focused on Hammond's operation, leaving the perimeter's blind spots unmonitored. Porter's note had specified Unit 317. Sarah and Max navigated the maze of storage units, staying low. Voices echoed off metal doors, Hammond directing his men with clipped efficiency. "Everything from Section C needs to be loaded before sunrise. Leave no traces." They reached Unit 317, just as the sound of machinery whirred to life somewhere deeper in the facility. Sarah pressed against the cool metal wall, Max alert beside her. Through a gap between units, she watched 4 men wheeling cartloads of crates from a larger unit into the van. Each crate bore military-style marking codes that matched the documents from her grandfather's files. Her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. "Behind you, don't react. Porter's daughter is safe." Sarah forced herself to breathe steadily as footsteps approached. Max remained eerily calm, his behavior suggesting a familiar scent. "Agent Collins." Captain Rodriguez's whisper was barely audible. "Your grandmother called me. Quite a remarkable woman. She's secure at the precinct, giving her statement to Internal Affairs." He moved into her peripheral vision, his service weapon drawn. "Care to explain why you went dark?" "Sir, I can prove the memorial's being used for—" "I know. Eleanor showed me Thomas's evidence. We've got a task force surrounding the facility, but Hammond's people have federal connections. We need solid proof of active criminal enterprise, not just historical records." A sharp cry of pain cut through the night. Porter's voice. Sarah's body tensed, but Rodriguez gripped her arm. "Wait," he breathed. Almost. The facility's main lights suddenly blazed on. Hammond's angry shout carried clearly. "Who tipped them off? Porter, you worthless—" "Atlanta PD, nobody move!" Multiple voices roared the command as tactical teams emerged from the shadows. But Sarah's focus locked on a distinct sound, Max's specific alert whine that meant imminent danger. She spun, just as a figure lunged from behind a storage unit, weapon raised. Sarah's training took over. She deflected the gun while Max launched, taking the attacker down with practiced precision. The gun skittered across concrete as Rodriguez moved to assist. "Agent Collins!" Porter's desperate voice rose above the chaos. "The sub-level access. They're using the tunnel system." Sarah's mind flashed to the memorial blueprints. The storage facility wasn't just a waypoint, it was connected to the memorial's underground network. "Max, find!" The command was unnecessary. Her partner was already moving, tracking a scent trail to a hidden entrance behind Unit 317. Rodriguez barked orders into his radio as Sarah and Max descended narrow stairs. The tunnel was crude but stable, decades old but recently maintained. Their flashlight beams caught glimpses of military storage crates, some dated as recently as last week. Max froze, his posture signaling multiple threats ahead. Sarah heard it too, voices arguing, echoing off concrete walls. Hammond's distinctive tone carried clearly. "The evidence goes in the incinerator, all of it. Then collapse the tunnel entrance." Sarah keyed her radio, whispering coordinates to Rodriguez. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before decades of evidence would be destroyed, but the voices came from around a blind corner, and the tunnel offered no cover. Max's muscles bunched, combat training warring with protective instinct. Sarah felt the same conflict, duty versus safety. Then she remembered her grandmother's words. Thomas died trying to expose this. Her decision crystallized. Max, Ghost Protocol. It was a command they'd practiced but never used in the field. Total stealth approach followed by simultaneous takedown. Max's eyes locked with hers, complete trust flowing between them. Sarah clicked off her flashlight. In the darkness, she felt Max press against her leg, guiding her forward. They moved as one unit, her steps matching his, until the voices were just around the corner. The smell of gasoline stung her nostrils. They were preparing to burn it all. On 3, she breathed, her hand on Max's collar. 1, 2... An explosion rocked the tunnel from behind, Rodriguez's team breaching another entrance. In the chaos that followed, Sarah and Max moved with devastating synchronization. Max targeted Hammond's armed guard, while Sarah tackled Hammond himself, who was frantically trying to light a makeshift fuse. "It's over," Sarah growled, securing Hammond's wrists as Rodriguez's team flooded the tunnel. 50 years of secrets. It ends tonight. Hammond laughed bitterly. "You're just like your grandfather. He didn't understand either. Some secrets protect people. The money, the art, it kept Atlanta's economy alive after the war. We built this city on theft and murder," Sarah finished, hauling him up. "Those families you stole from, they built this city with blood and sacrifice and honest work. This," she gestured to the stockpile of stolen goods, "this ends now." As evidence teams swarmed the tunnel, Sarah found Max standing guard over the subdued guard. She knelt, pressing her forehead to her partner's. "Good boy," she whispered. Max's tail wagged once, his mission focus finally relaxing. Her phone buzzed, a text from the precinct. "Your grandmother wants you to know she's proud, and she's making her sweet potato pie to celebrate." Sarah smiled, scratching Max's ears. Dawn was breaking above ground, and with it, 50 years of shadows were finally being dragged into the light. But something in Max's posture told her they weren't finished. His head tilted toward a section of wall, his body language signaling a final secret waiting to be uncovered. Sarah smiled grimly. The night's revelations weren't over yet. Max's insistent pawing at the tunnel wall couldn't be ignored. Sarah had learned to trust these moments, when her partner's training and instinct merged into something almost supernatural. Evidence teams paused their documentation as she approached the section of concrete, Hammond's smirk visible in her peripheral vision despite his handcuffs. "Your dog's wasting time," Hammond called out. "That's solid foundation." The hollow echo from Sarah's knock cut him off. Max's tail went rigid, his nose working overtime. Rodriguez stepped forward, shining his tactical light on the wall. "Look at the seams," he muttered. "Newer concrete than the rest." Sarah ran her fingers along the edge, finding a slight depression. The twin keys from the boxes felt heavy in her pocket. "Sir, remember the memorial blueprints. This isn't just a tunnel. It's a hub system," Rodriguez finished. "The real storage was never in these tunnels. This was just the transport route." He keyed his radio. "Get me a demolition team down here." "Wait." Sarah withdrew the keys, studying their antiqued surface. "Max, search." The command was specific. Find the lock. Max moved methodically along the wall, stopping at a point near the floor. Sarah knelt, brushing away years of grime to reveal a small panel. The keys fit perfectly, one above the other. Sarah held her breath, turning them simultaneously. A mechanical click echoed through the tunnel, followed by the groan of long dormant gears. The concrete panel swung inward, revealing a chamber that made the evidence teams gasp. "My God," Rodriguez breathed. The room was massive, stretching beyond their flashlight beams. Climate-controlled cases lined the walls, filled with artwork. Gold bars stacked in military precision, filing cabinets with labels in multiple languages. But it was the center of the room that drew Sarah's attention. A simple wooden desk, meticulously preserved. "That's impossible," Hammond whispered, his composure finally cracking. "That office, it was destroyed in '46. Sarah approached the desk, Max at her side. A brass nameplate caught the light. Captain Thomas Collins, Asset Recovery Division. Her grandfather's office, preserved like a museum piece, or a trophy. "You kept it," she said, turning to Hammond. "All these years. Why?" "Insurance." Hammond's voice had lost its arrogance. "Your grandfather was respected, trusted. Having his office, his files, it legitimized everything. Anyone who asked questions, we showed them carefully selected papers. Thomas Collins approved it all, we'd say. Dead men tell no tales." Max's growl was sudden and fierce. Sarah spun back to the desk, just as a shadow detached itself from the darkness beyond. The click of a hammer being cocked froze everyone in place. "Hello, Sarah." Senator William Morrison stepped into the light, his distinguished face familiar from 100 political photographs. "You have your grandfather's determination, and unfortunately, his inability to understand the bigger picture." Morrison's gun remained steady as he moved forward. The evidence teams reached for weapons, but his next words stopped them. "I wouldn't. My security detail is already in position topside." "Stand down, Captain Rodriguez. That's an executive order." Sarah's mind raced. Morrison's name had appeared in her grandfather's files, a junior officer in 46. Now he was on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Everything connected. "You were there," she said, "when my grandfather died. It wasn't just Hammond's father. You helped cover it up. Thomas was my friend." Morrison's voice held genuine regret. "I begged him to understand. Post-war Atlanta was hanging by a thread. The money, the art, it rebuilt our city, created jobs, funded hospitals, schools." He gestured at the room's contents. "Yes, we stole. Yes, we lied. But look what we built with it." "Built on blood," Sarah countered. "On the graves of soldiers who died thinking their families would be cared for. On my grandfather's murder. A regrettable necessity. Just like this is." Morrison's finger tightened on the trigger. "The evidence is too complete. The operation too vital to national security." "I'm sorry, Sarah." Max tensed beside her, combat ready. Sarah felt the weight of her grandmother's words. "Give them hell, baby." In the split second before chaos erupted, a plan crystallized. "Max! Lights!" The command triggered their practiced response. Max launched at the nearest evidence tech's hand, knocking their flashlight upward. The beam hit Morrison's eyes, causing him to flinch. Sarah moved instantly, years of training taking over. Her shoulder hit Morrison's midsection as Max targeted his gun hand. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling as they went down. Rodriguez's team rushed forward, subduing Morrison's thrashing form. "Senator William Morrison," Rodriguez's voice carried official authority, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, theft of federal assets, and the murder of Captain Thomas Collins." Sarah caught movement behind her. Hammond had slipped his cuffs and was sprinting for the tunnel. "Max, take!" The command released her partner to pursue. Hammond made it 10 steps before 90 pounds of highly trained K-9 unit brought him down with professional efficiency. As evidence teams secured the scene, Sarah returned to her grandfather's desk. A folded paper lay in the center drawer, sealed with wax, never delivered. Her name was written on the front in Thomas Collins' handwriting. "That's impossible," Hammond called out as he was recuffed. "That desk has been sealed since 46. Sarah broke the seal, unfolding paper that had waited decades to be read. Her grandfather's words, written the day before his death, filled her eyes. "To my granddaughter Sarah, Eleanor is certain you'll be a girl. If you're reading this, I failed to expose the truth. But I believe in legacy. Not the false legacy of power and stolen gold, but the legacy of justice, of standing firm when others falter. I've hidden evidence in 2 boxes, separated to ensure survival. The keys, when united, lead here. I don't know you yet, but I know the Collins blood runs true. You found your way here because, like me, you understand. Some truths are worth dying for, but more importantly, they're worth living for, worth fighting for. Be brave, be just, and when the moment comes, be the light that drives out darkness. With love and faith, your grandfather, Thomas." Sarah pressed the letter to her chest as Max returned to her side, his mission completed. Through tears, she saw Morrison and Hammond being led away, their empire of secrets finally crumbling. "Captain," she called to Rodriguez, "there's something else we need to do." The growing light of dawn filtered down the tunnel entrance. It was time to bring everything into the light. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood before the World War II memorial, its marble facade gleaming in the morning sun. The media circus had finally died down after Senator Morrison's arrest. Max sat at attention beside her, his coat freshly groomed for the ceremony to come. The memorial's gates were draped with red, white, and blue bunting, and chairs filled the courtyard where, just weeks ago, they'd unearthed decades of corruption. "You look sharp, partner," Sarah murmured, adjusting her dress uniform's collar. Max's tail wagged once, but he maintained his professional demeanor. They'd been through a dozen press conferences and interviews since the case broke, and he'd developed a perfect pose for the cameras. Eleanor Collins approached, walking unassisted despite her 92 years. The past weeks had transformed her, as if the weight of 50 years of secrets had finally lifted from her shoulders. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said, straightening Sarah's badge, "though he'd hate all this fuss." "The families are ready," Captain Rodriguez called softly. He'd aged too, but differently. The case's resolution had renewed his faith in justice. "It's time." Sarah took her place at the podium, Max positioned perfectly at her side. Before her, hundreds of faces looked up with a mix of grief and hope. They were the families, children, grandchildren, and even a few elderly spouses of the soldiers whose compensation had been stolen. Each had received a personal visit over the past weeks, as the task force worked to return what was rightfully theirs. 50 years ago, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd, Captain Thomas Collins gave his life trying to expose a terrible truth. Today, we finally complete his mission. She paused, meeting her grandmother's eyes. The memorial behind me was built as a monument to courage and sacrifice. For too long, it was used to hide darkness. Today, we reclaim it for light. Rodriguez stepped forward, unveiling a new bronze plaque beside the podium. Thomas Collins' face smiled out from the metal, his uniform pristine, his eyes so like Sarah's gazing into the future. "The Thomas Collins Truth and Reconciliation Fund is now active," Sarah continued. "Every dollar recovered from the hidden vaults, over 40 million in total, has been restored to the families with interest. But money alone can't heal 50 years of injustice. That's why the fund will also provide educational scholarships for the descendants of affected veterans, ensuring that their legacy of service creates opportunities for generations to come." In the front row, James Porter sat with his daughter, both wearing proud smiles. His testimony had been crucial in unraveling the conspiracy. Behind them, Sarah spotted familiar faces from the evidence teams, the DA's office, and even a few retired officers who'd helped piece together the decades-old cover-up. Senator Morrison, Theodore Hammond, and 13 others face federal charges, Sarah announced. Their trials begin next month, but today isn't about them. It's about the men and women who served, who sacrificed, and who deserved better from those entrusted with their legacy. Max's ears suddenly perked up. Sarah followed his gaze to the memorial's entrance, where a group of elderly veterans had arrived. They made their way forward slowly, some in wheelchairs, others walking proudly in uniforms they'd preserved for decades. The crowd parted respectfully. "These men," Sarah's voice softened with reverence, "served alongside my grandfather. They suspected the truth, but were powerless to prove it. Today they stand witness as we right a 50-year wrong." The ceremony that followed was both solemn and hopeful. Families came forward one by one, receiving documents that restored their stolen inheritance. But more importantly, each received a folder containing their soldiers' full service record, photographs and letters, precious memories that had been hidden away in the secret vault. Eleanor accepted Thomas's folder last, her hands steady as she opened it. Inside lay his silver star, lost for 50 years, and a photograph Sarah had never seen, Thomas holding baby Eleanor, both laughing at the camera. Max pressed gently against Eleanor's leg as tears filled her eyes. "There's one more thing," Sarah said, turning back to the crowd. "The memorial's underground levels, once used to hide stolen treasures, have been converted. I'd like to invite you all to follow me." The hidden entrance had been transformed into a proper staircase, leading down to a brightly lit museum. Glass cases displayed recovered artifacts alongside photographs and stories of the soldiers they'd belonged to. But the centerpiece was Thomas Collins' office, preserved exactly as they'd found it, with one addition: a full wall displaying the evidence he'd gathered, finally seeing the light of day. "This is now the Collins Center for Military Family Support," Sarah explained. "A place where veterans' families can get help navigating benefits, find resources, and ensure that no one's service is ever forgotten or exploited again." As the families explored the museum, Sarah found a quiet moment with Max in her grandfather's office. "We did it, partner," she whispered, rubbing his ears. "We brought it all into the light." Max's tail wagged as he placed his paw on a newspaper on the desk. The headline read, "K-9 Unit's Discovery Leads to Largest Corruption Bust in Atlanta History." Below was a photo of Sarah and Max at the crime scene, perfectly posed despite the chaos around them. "Agent Collins?" A young voice interrupted her thoughts. A teenage girl stood in the doorway holding a framed photo. "My grandfather," she swallowed hard. "He served with Captain Collins. I'm applying for one of the scholarships. I want to study criminal justice." Sarah smiled, recognizing Thomas's eyes in another face. He'd like that, want to hear about the case. As Sarah began the story, more people gathered to listen. Max settled at her feet, ever vigilant, ever faithful. Through the office window, sunlight streamed into the underground museum, washing away the last shadows of secrecy. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, carrying her famous sweet potato pie. "Thought we could use a celebration," she announced. "Thomas always said justice tastes sweeter with pie." Sarah looked around at the gathered faces, family, colleagues, strangers united by a shared journey toward truth. Max's tail thumped against the floor, and she smiled. Some legacies were written in marble and medals, but the truest ones lived in moments like these, in justice served, in secrets unveiled, and in the unshakable bond between a handler and her K-9, forever ready to chase down the next mystery.